this is a fascinating and really tragic story. This was reported in an English publication called South China Morning Post. And the title, and I recommend everybody will read it, and I'll try to remember to link to it in the show notes, is "As Winter Grips Rural China, Who's Really Paying the Price for Beijing's Clean Air Plan?" And you definitely read the whole thing, because it has a lot of very specific stories that I can't go into here. But the main thrust of it is how China, in order to combat a legitimate challenge that they're facing of smog, it's depriving people of coal and forcing them to use natural gas that's up to 3 times as expensive and often doesn't work at all. And this has left some of the poorest people there unable to heat their homes in the coldest parts of winter. And so, just for example, one of the people profiled was forced to pay more than 10% of his annual income for his winter heating bill. So, I mean, like, you just do the math on what that would mean for your life. And I mean, this is I think, an illustration of, on a smaller scale, of when you have an authoritarian government making decisions about how to cope with side effects of energy. Whereas what should happen in these kinds of cases, at least in my view, is that, like, this is exactly the sort of thing you want to leave to local control, so that communities can decide for themselves, like, are we better off paying more for cleaner air? And as you're more and more prosperous, then the answer is more likely to be yes, versus are we better off having air that's not as good, but at least we are not freezing or spending 1/10 of our income on winter heating?
I mean, my understanding is that the way they're approaching it is very inelegant, in that it just seems like they're mandating gas all over the place instead of, there's certainly ways you can make coal a lot cleaner. There's certain burning practices that are better. Is that your impression?
Right. It's not totally 100% clear exactly what's going on, but this is the whole issue of, you'd want to think very carefully about, like, how do we best achieve this goal of cleaning the air, versus we have this ambitious plan that's just going to get rid of the coal that everybody knows is bad, and then complete indifference to the suffering of human beings who have to pay the price for it.
One point that this article, well, it doesn't make explicitly, but I think of when I read articles like this, and really when I go anywhere cold, is that, the biggest climate problem is cold. Now, drought might be an exception to that in certain ways, but in terms of just direct climate things, it's being cold. Cold is a real issue. In general, the weather is too cold for people to be comfortable, and they need to do a whole bunch of things. But even with clothing, it's hard to really combat that. You really need heating. And thus, historically, people have been so eager to do anything they could to keep their homes warm, or at least semi-warm. And this is an example of taking a human flourishing perspective on the issue of climate safety, to look at, okay, what exactly threatens climate safety, and to recognize that nature unaltered is a huge threat to climate safety, to then think of what actions do we need to take to keep humans safe from climate. And that can't mean, well, let's just stop using fossil fuels and then everything will be fine, because for climate, as people experiencing it, all the main things they need to do involve having a lot of energy. And for everyone, that involves a lot of fossil fuels, and particularly for poorer people, that usually involves even more fossil fuels. So it's crazy to me that people will talk about climate change, but just in this very abstract, removed way, whether it's in the future or focused on one particular event in the news, but not the reality that people really need to keep warm. And for a lot of people in the world, that's still very difficult. And that's a really urgent human problem. And that's a different kind of problem from that should really be taken seriously. We shouldn't just be focused on, oh, well, this polar bear is moving from one piece of ice to another, and what does that mean about the global ecosystem? If you're going to care about that, then you need to care about life as people are experiencing it.